The Jarvax Empire was a name whispered across star systems like a dark prophecy. Vast fleets of sleek warships moved like shadows through the void, and entire worlds fell to their might without firing a single shot. To most in the galaxy, they were an unstoppable force, a tide of conquest so overwhelming that resistance seemed not only futile, but impossible. For centuries, the Jarvax had expanded their reach, conquering system after system with astonishing speed. Their approach was always the same: overwhelming display of power, swift negotiations backed by a show of force, and a final, crushing blow to any who hesitated. Entire civilizations folded like cards before them, surrendering their leaders, resources, and even their histories. The galaxy was quickly becoming a vast network of vassal worlds, all connected by the iron grip of the Empire. But what made the Jarvax truly terrifying was how rarely they needed to fight. Their reputation alone ensured submission. Stories spread about their advanced technology, ships faster than light, weapons capable of disintegrating entire fleets in seconds, and artificial intelligences so complex they could predict and counter any tactic. The Jarvax were not just conquerors, they were perfection incarnate, a relentless machine built for domination. As the Jarvax fleets moved forward, their path was nearly unopposed. Strategic outposts sent frantic distress signals, only to fall silent moments later. Empires that had once thrived on war and pride crumbled overnight, their warriors surrendering to the might of the Empire without raising a blade. The galaxy watched in fearful awe, resigned to the inevitable, yet amid this sea of submission, one system remained untouched, unnoticed by the great conquerors. On the far fringe of the galaxy, in a quiet, unremarkable corner of space, a single human warship USS Defiant patrolled its sector. Humans, regarded by the galaxy's elites as primitive and disorganized, had long been dismissed as insignificant. Their technology was outdated, their fleets small, and their governments fractured. Many saw humanity as a relic of a bygone era, a minor annoyance at best. The Defiant was far from impressive by the standards of the great powers, but its crew was sharp and determined. Captain Ellen Voss paced the command deck, her eyes scanning the holographic star map. The hum of the ship's engines and the quiet chatter of her officers were the only sounds breaking the stillness. "We've had no contact for 2 weeks," her first officer reported. No signs of unusual activity in the sector. Elena nodded, but felt a restless energy in the air. Reports from neighboring systems suggested the Jarvax were still moving forward, their conquest unchallenged. The humans might have been small, but they were not blind. They knew what was coming. Suddenly, the ship's sensors flickered with incoming data, a fleet approaching, fast and silent. Elena's eyes narrowed. "Jarvax," she said quietly, already reaching for her communicator. "All hands to battle stations. Let's show them what humanity can do." The approaching fleet was just a scouting party, but to the humans aboard the Defiant, it was a threat, a test of their resolve. As the Jarvax vessels slipped through the void, confident and unchallenged, the humans prepared to strike. The first volley of plasma fire exploded in the dark, hitting the lead Jarvax cruiser with surgical precision. The alien scouts staggered, surprised by the sudden attack. The Defiant's weapons found their marks again and again, disabling engines and communication systems before the enemy could react properly. Across the galaxy, the news was slow to spread, but where it reached, it ignited a spark. For the first time in generations, the invincible conquerors had met resistance, and it came from a species no one had taken seriously. Captain Voss stood on the command deck, watching the flickering battle data. "Hold the line," she ordered. "We're not just fighting for this system. We're fighting for all those who can't fight for themselves." The Defiant was small, outgunned, and outnumbered, but its crew fought with a fierce determination born of knowing their survival meant more than just their own lives. It meant hope. As the battle raged, the galaxy began to change. The Jarvax Empire, which had never faced true opposition, would soon learn that humanity was not a foe to be dismissed lightly. The age of submission was ending. A new chapter was beginning, one where the human spirit would challenge the very stars themselves. The edge of the galaxy was a place many powerful empires ignored, a vast, cold expanse dotted with tiny, unremarkable systems that held little value. To the mighty Jarvax Empire, it was a fringe, a place too remote and inconsequential to waste resources on. That was exactly why the human warship USS Defiant was stationed there. Unlike the grand capital fleets that dazzled with hundreds of Ships, the Defiant was modest, a single warship with a small but skilled crew. Its mission was simple but vital: patrol the border, protect human colonies, and watch for any threats that might slip through the cracks of galactic politics. It was a routine job, far removed from the grand battles that shaped empires. Captain Elena Voss moved through the ship's corridors with purpose, greeting crew members as they prepared for their shift. The air was filled with a low hum of machinery and the steady rhythm of footsteps. Despite the quiet surroundings, a sense of alertness hung in the atmosphere, as if the crew could sense that something beyond routine was stirring in the mess. Hall, Lieutenant Harris, the ship's communications officer, monitored incoming messages. Most were mundane routine check-ins from outposts, updates on supply runs, and occasional reports from nearby civilian vessels. But the recent silence from neighboring systems was troubling. The Jarvax haven't shown up here before, Harris said to Elena as she passed, and now we're picking up strange readings along the border. Elena frowned, her mind racing through possibilities. The Jarvax rarely wasted time on patrols or scouting missions near human space. They preferred swift, decisive strikes on weak targets. But something was different now. In the command center, the crew operated like a well-oiled machine. Sensors scanned the stars constantly, and the tactical officers prepared for any sign of trouble. The Defiant systems were old by Galactic standards, but their crew knew how to get the most out of every circuit and console on the bridge, instantly focused on the holographic displays, watching for any movement beyond the usual stellar noise. Suddenly, a blip appeared, a small fleet moving fast, almost silently. The data identified it as Jarvax. Captain Lee called out, "We've got incoming vessels." Scouting fleet, Jarvax signature, Elena's jaw tightened. Estimate, time to reach our position, approximately 7 minutes, Lee replied. The bridge fell silent for a moment as everyone absorbed the news. This was no routine patrol. The Jarvax were coming for a reason. Elena stood and faced her crew. "This is what we've been preparing for. We may be outnumbered and outgunned, but we have something they don't are will to fight. Ready weapons and shields. All hands to battle stations." The ship's corridors buzzed with activity as the crew moved swiftly into position. In the armory, soldiers checked their gear. In engineering, technicians monitored power levels, preparing to push the Defiant's aging engines to their limits. Meanwhile, in the silent expanse of space, the Jarvax scouts approached with an arrogant confidence. Their ships gleamed with advanced alloys, equipped with weapons that had toppled entire star systems. They expected no resistance here, only swift surrender, but as they neared, the humans opened fire. Bright beams of energy cut through the darkness, striking the lead Jarvax cruiser before it could react. Explosions rocked the enemy formation as weapons targeted engines and sensor rays. The humans fought with a precision, a ferocity that the Jarvax had never encountered from a species they considered insignificant. On the bridge of the Defiant, Elena's voice was calm but firm. "Keep the pressure on. Don't let them regroup." Despite their smaller numbers, the human crew's coordination and quick thinking turned the tide. Using the Defiant's maneuverability, they darted between enemy fire, striking weak points, and retreating before the Jarvax could mount a proper counterattack. For the first time in decades, the Jarvax found themselves on the defensive. The battle was brief but fierce. When the smoke cleared, several Jarvax scouts were disabled or retreating, their advance blocked by a single human warship. The Defiant had held its ground. Back on the Defiant, the crew exhaled in relief, but Elena knew this was only the beginning. They had sent a message to the galaxy: humanity would not be conquered quietly. In the days that followed, word of the Defiant's stance spread slowly but surely. Among the scattered systems, whispers grew of a new hope. The quiet sentinel at the edge of the galaxy had fired the first shot, and it had been heard loud and clear. The victory of the USS Defiant was small in scale, but enormous in consequence. The Jarvax scouting fleet, once confident and poised to subdue yet another system without resistance, was forced into a hasty retreat. For the first time in generations, the Empire faced an enemy that did not bow. Back aboard the Defiant, Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge, watching the last of the Jarvax vessels disappear into the depths of space. Her crew worked silently, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. The tension that had gripped the ship from the moment sensors detected the enemy was now replaced by a cautious hope. Lieutenant Harris broke the silence. "We've sent out distress beacons and messages to nearby systems. If there are any allies, or even other isolated ships out here, they'll know we're standing. Elena nodded. Good. The galaxy needs to hear that resistance is possible. Though the Defiant was a lone ship, its actions created ripples across the stars. News traveled slowly in this vast corner of the galaxy, but when it did, it spread. Like wildfire dot in a distant, modest colony world. Governor Elon Varys received the transmission with disbelief. For decades, his people had lived in quiet submission to the Jarvax. They knew the Empire's ships were coming, always coming, but none had ever dared fight back. The stories of entire civilizations surrendering without a fight were grim, reminders of their own likely fate, but this message was different. It was a call to arms, a spark igniting hope. They fought, Governor Varys said quietly. Staring at the flickering whole screen, they actually fought back. In the weeks that followed, small groups across the galaxy began to whisper about the Defiant. Refugees, traitors, and even some Jarvax subjects who dared dream of freedom passed along stories of the human warship that refused to kneel. Meanwhile, aboard the Defiant, preparations began for what might come next. The Jarvax were not a force to be underestimated. If they returned with reinforcements, the humans would be overwhelmed. Yet surrender was not an option. Engineer Kai Masuo worked tirelessly in the engine room, pushing the ship's aging reactors to their limits. If we can improve our shields and weapon recharge rates, maybe we can keep this up longer, he told Elena during a brief visit to the engineering bay. Elena appreciated his optimism. Every advantage counts. We have to be ready. The tactical officers mapped out patrol routes designed to disrupt Jarvax supply lines and scout movements. They knew they were fighting the guerrilla war. Now hit fast, strike hard, and disappear before the overwhelming enemy could respond. But the Defiant was more than just a warship, it was a symbol. News of their stand reached even the Jarvax high command, where it sparked confusion and concern. How can such a small, outdated ship resist their scouts? The answer was unsettling. Humans were unpredictable. Their tactics did not conform to any known model. Their bravery and tenacity defied the Jarvax's assumptions of superiority. Admiral Vector, the commander of the Jarvax scouting fleets, was tasked with investigating the human anomaly. He studied the battle logs carefully and found himself frustrated by the humans' quick decisions and relentless spirit. They fight like cornered predators, Vector reported coldly. Their technology is inferior, but their will is strong. They must be eliminated. Back in human space, the Defiant's actions inspired more than hope. They sparked action. Several smaller alien factions, long oppressed by the Jarvax, began to send covert messages, offering to share intelligence or coordinate strikes. Though many feared reprisals, the courage displayed by humans opened doors that had been sealed shut for decades. Captain Voss received these messages cautiously. She understood the risks of trust, but also recognized the necessity of alliances. Strength lies in unity, she told her officers. If we stand alone, we fall alone. But if we stand together, we might just change everything. As the weeks passed, the galaxy's quiet corners grew restless. The once silent advance of the Jarvax had been broken. What had seemed inevitable was now uncertain. In a forgotten star system, the spark of resistance ignited into a flame. The Defiant had shown the way, proof that even in the darkest void, one ship, one crew, one species could light the path to freedom. The battle was no longer just about survival, it was about hope. In the vast chambers of the Jarvax high command, a storm of confusion and frustration swirled. For centuries, their conquest had been nearly effortless, a flawless machine grinding down opposition with ruthless efficiency. But the recent encounter with the human warship Defiant had shattered their expectations and forced a hard reckoning. Admiral Vector stood before the glowing strategic map, flanked by officers and analysts, his claws clenched in anger. How is it possible that a single human ship could disrupt an entire scouting fleet? The chief analyst, a slender Jarvax named Creel, tapped on a holographic display, replaying the battle footage over and over. Their tactics are unconventional, smaller ships, but highly maneuverable. Their weapon strikes focus on disabling systems rather than destruction, conserving energy for sustained combat. Adaptive, Vector growled, and relentless. This species fights with an intensity we have not seen in centuries. Their resilience is beyond expectation. Other officers murmured agreement. The humans' behavior was unlike any other species the Empire had encountered. They did not follow the usual protocols of submission or retreat. They fought with an unpredictable ferocity. That disrupted the Jarvax's carefully calculated strategies. Vector slammed his claw on the table. We must understand them, find their weaknesses. This human spirit cannot be allowed to inspire rebellion. To this end, the High Command dispatched covert probe stealth drones designed to infiltrate human space and gather data. But the humans anticipated such moves. The Defiance crew had begun using erratic patrol routes, electronic countermeasures, and decoys, making it difficult for Jarvax intelligence to collect reliable information. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Elena Voss was well aware of the new pressure. Sensors picked up strange disturbances, possible drone signatures, or hidden surveillance. But the humans were ready. Lieutenant Harris worked at the communications console, his fingers dancing across the controls. Captain, we've detected several attempts at electronic infiltration. They're probing our defenses. Elena nodded. Activate all countermeasures and prepare for possible contact. The Defiant was a small ship, but its crew was resourceful. Engineer Kamasuo had retrofitted systems with scavenged technology, creating a web of defenses that frustrated even the Jarvax's sophisticated probes. Despite these challenges, the Defiant's greatest strength was its crew. Their ability to think creatively under pressure, to adapt faster than any machine, made them unpredictable. During one tense moment, instantly called out, "Captain, incoming message." It's unencrypted, but in a language none of our usual contacts use. Elena ordered the message decrypted. The words revealed a startling truth. Some alien factions within the Empire's conquered worlds were beginning to question their loyalty. Secret messages hinted at simmering unrest, inspired by humanity's courage. In a private moment, Elena considered the broader implications. The Defiant was no longer just a warship defending a remote sector. It was a beacon for change. Every action, every broadcast carried hope to those yearning for freedom. But with hope came danger. Jarvax fleets began to reroute, focusing on human-controlled systems. The High Command sent elite task forces designed to crush resistance swiftly and brutally. The Empire's response was calculated and relentless. On the Defiant, tensions ran high. Captain Voss gathered her senior officers in the briefing room. "We're no longer invisible," she said firmly. "The Empire knows we exist, and they will do everything to stop us. We must become smarter, faster, and more unpredictable. Our survival depends on our ability to stay one step ahead." First Officer Rin, a sharp and experienced tactician, leaned forward. "We should consider alliances. We've received signals from smaller alien factions willing to coordinate." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "Agreed. Isolation means defeat. Unity is our best weapon." Outside the Defiant, the stars stretched endlessly. The galaxy was no longer a quiet place where the Jarvax ruled unchallenged. It was a battleground of wills, with humanity rising as a new force. In the chambers of the Jarvax, Admiral Vector watched the reports, his mind racing. The humans were a mystery, a puzzle he was determined to solve. But the more he studied them, the more it became clear. This was not a simple fight of technology or numbers. It was a clash of spirits, wills, and hopes. And in this clash, the outcome was far from certain. News traveled slowly in the vastness of space. But when it reached the oppressed worlds under the Jarvax Empire's thumb, it set fires in hearts long cold with fear. The story of a single human warship, the Defiant, standing up and pushing back the Empire's scouts was whispered in secret meetings, shared in encrypted transmissions, and painted in hidden murals. It became a symbol of defiance, a beacon of hope in a galaxy where hope had nearly vanished. On a remote mining colony orbiting a gray, rocky planet, the people gathered in dimly lit rooms. Hushed voices spoke of rebellion, inspired by tales of the humans who refused to bow. "Maybe it's time we stop running," said Lyra, a young engineer, her eyes bright with determination. "If the humans can stand against the Jarvax, so can we." Her friend, Talon, shook his head. "We're no match for their fleets. They crush entire worlds without breaking a sweat." "But the Defiant isn't alone anymore," Lyra whispered. "Others are watching. Others want to fight." Across the galaxy, similar conversations echoed. Small resistance groups, long broken by despair, began to organize again. Smugglers and traders risked their lives carrying messages of solidarity. Even some Jarvax citizens, tired of endless conquest, wondered if change was possible. Back aboard the Defiant, Captain Elena Voss felt the weight of this growing responsibility. The ship was no longer just a military vessel. It was a symbol that could inspire or falter. The crew worked tirelessly, knowing that every victory or loss would ripple across countless worlds. Lieutenant Harris monitored incoming transmissions, filtering through countless pleas, warnings, and offers of alliance. "We've received messages from several alien factions," Harris reported one morning. "They're small and cautious, but they want to coordinate strikes. They see us as a spark." Elena looked at the data. The Galaxy was beginning to respond. "Range a secure channel," she ordered. "It's time we talked." The Defiant sent out carefully encoded communications, inviting allies to join in a coordinated effort against the Jarvax's unchallenged rule. Trust was scarce, but the need for unity was greater. In the meantime, the Jarvax High Command grew uneasy. The Empire's conquests were slowing. Systems once compliant now murmured rebellion. The myth of their invincibility was unraveling. Admiral Vector sat in his war chamber, watching intercepted transmissions between resistance groups. "The humans are dangerous," he said grimly, "not because of their technology, but because of what they represent. We must crush this flame before it becomes a wildfire." He ordered an increase in patrols and harsher crackdowns, but the harder the Empire pressed, the more resistance hardened. In response, the Defiant, its new allies launched daring raids on Jarvax supply lines, disrupting fuel convoys and communication hubs. These hit-and-run attacks slowed the Empire's advance and spread a message of vulnerability. During one such mission, the Defiant's sensors picked up distress signals from a small Allied outpost under siege. Without hesitation, Captain Voss ordered a rescue operation despite the risks. As the Defiant raced through enemy fire to reach the outpost, the crew worked in perfect harmony. Engineers rerouted power to shields, tactical officers coordinated evasive maneuvers, and medics prepared for casualties. The rescue was successful, and the grateful outpost broadcasted their thanks. The message of solidarity grew louder. On the bridge, Elena allowed herself a brief moment of hope. "This is only the beginning," she told her crew. "Together, we can light the darkness." Yet she knew the Jarvax would not yield easily. The Empire had crushed countless rebellions. Therefore, the coming battles would test every ounce of courage and strategy humanity and its allies could muster. Still, the spark was there, and hope had begun to burn. The Galaxy's quiet balance was breaking. The once unstoppable Jarvax Empire found itself facing a challenge unlike any before, a human-led resistance that grew bolder with every passing day. Far from the core worlds, in the shadows between stars, small alliances were forming, inspired by the courage of the USS Defiant and its crew. Captain Elena Voss stood on the Defiant's bridge, staring at the holographic map that displayed the expanding network of allied systems. Each blinking light represented a world willing to fight, a spark of rebellion in the darkness. The reality was sobering. The Jarvax would not stand idle. Reports from our allies show increased patrols near the outer rim, First Officer Wren said, breaking the silence. "They're moving in force, preparing for a counterattack." Elena nodded grimly. "We knew this was coming. We pushed the Empire to react. Now we have to be ready." The Defiant's crew worked around the clock, upgrading defenses, training new recruits from allied worlds, and coordinating with scattered resistance groups. The ship was no longer just a sentinel. It was the command center of a growing rebellion. Engineer Kamatsuo adjusted the power conduits in engineering, sweat beading on his brow. "If we can boost shield output by even 10%, it might give us the edge we need in prolonged engagements." "Do it," Elena replied. "Every advantage counts." Meanwhile, the Jarvax High Command prepared their response. Admiral Vector convened with his top generals in a fortified war room, deep within the Empire's capital. The air was thick with tension. "The humans and their allies are growing in strength," Vector said, his voice cold and resolute. "We will not allow this rebellion to spread." He pointed to the strategic map, marking key systems held by the resistance. "Our fleets will launch simultaneous strikes. We will isolate and destroy their centers of power before they can consolidate." Plans were drawn to cripple supply routes, sever communication networks, and crush rebel strongholds with overwhelming force. The Jarvax believed that fear and power would restore order, but the resistance was prepared. Thanks to intercepted intelligence and rapid communication between allied worlds, they anticipated the Imperial assault. On the Defiant, tension tightened the crew's nerves. Every alert was met with swift readiness, every signal scrutinized. Yet beneath the surface of urgency, There was determination, a fierce belief that this was more than survival. This was a fight for freedom. The first wave of Jarvax attack. Fleets appeared on the borders of rebel space like storm clouds. Their numbers were vast, their weapons deadly. The resistance forces, though outnumbered, refused to cower. Elena gave the order: deploy fighters and prepare for battle. Protect our worlds at all costs. The void erupted with the flash of weapons fire and the roar of engines. Dogfights broke out as nimble resistance fighters engaged the heavily armed Jarvax cruisers. Explosions scattered across space like deadly fireworks. Despite their superior technology, the Jarvax found themselves frustrated by the hit-and-run tactics and the unexpected resilience of the resistance. The Defiant led a daring counterattack, striking at supply convoys and forcing the Empire's fleets to divide their forces. But the cost was high. Several Allied systems suffered devastating blows. Civilian casualties mounted. The war was no longer distant. It was at the doorstep of countless worlds died in the midst of battle. Elena received a coded message from an unknown source. The sender claimed to be a high-ranking Jarvax officer secretly sympathetic to the resistance. They offered crucial intelligence, a weakness in the Empire's command structure that could be exploited. The crew gathered in the briefing room, tension thick, trust was scarce. But the opportunity was too valuable to ignore. We must decide, Elena said, looking at each officer. Can we risk it? Could this be the turning point we need? First Officer Rin spoke first. We have no choice. If true, this could change everything. The decision was unanimous. The Defiant prepared to act on the secret information. It was a gamble, a high-stakes move that could either deal a crippling blow to the Jarvax or expose the resistance to a deadly trap. Outside, the rising storm of war churned among the stars. The fate of countless worlds hung in the balance, and at the heart of it all, humanity stood ready to face the Empire, no longer alone. The message had come without fanfare, hidden in layers of encryption and passed through channels no one dared trace openly. A high-ranking Jarvax officer, whose name was a closely guarded secret, claimed to oppose the Empire's ruthless conquest and offer the Defiant critical intelligence, a vulnerability in the Jarvax command network that could change the course of the war. Captain Elena Voss studied the decrypted files alongside her senior officers in the briefing room. Maps, fleet, movements, and schedules filled the holo display, pinpointing the timing and locations of a key Jarvax command relay cluster. Disrupting this network would blind the Imperial fleet coordination for crucial hours, creating an opening for a decisive strike. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for, Elena said, her voice steady but charged with urgency. We can't afford to ignore it. First Officer Rin nodded, fingers flying over a tablet as she plotted attack vectors. If we hit this relay hard and fast, it'll cause chaos among their fleets. Their ships will be unable to coordinate or support each other effectively. But it's deep in enemy territory, Lieutenant Harris reminded them. We'll be risking the Defiant and every Allied vessel in range. Elena met his gaze. Risk is part of this fight, but if we succeed, we strike a blow so severe the Empire won't recover quickly. The crew prepared for a stealth assault unlike any they had attempted before. Fighters were ready for rapid insertion and extraction, while engineers pushed the ship's cloaking technology to its limits. Every detail mattered. Failure meant annihilation. Success meant hope for millions died as the Defiant and Allied ships slipped into the shadow of enemy space. Tension crackled through the corridors. The crew's usual confidence was tempered by the gravity of the mission. Remember, Elena reminded them quietly before battle stations, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every world that dares to dream of freedom. The attack commenced under the veil of darkness. The Defiant, its escort fighters moved swiftly and silently, weaving through the Imperial patrols. Electronic countermeasures muffled their signatures, making them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. When they reached the relay cluster, the resistance launched a coordinated strike. Explosions rippled across the relay satellites, disabling communications. With brutal efficiency, chaos erupted in the Jarvax command fleets. Without their guidance, large cruisers collided or retreated in confusion, leaving smaller vessels vulnerable. The resistance capitalized immediately, pressing their advantage with relentless ferocity. The battle was fierce and costly. The Defiance shields were pushed beyond limits, and fighters sacrificed themselves to protect the flagship. But the gamble paid off. For hours, the Jarvax fleet was blind and fragmented. Captain Voss ordered a full assault on the Empire's supply convoys, striking deep into enemy lines. Rebel ships, emboldened by the moment, surged forward with unprecedented boldness across the galaxy. Transmissions lit up with news of the unexpected victory. The Resistance's morale soared. Even distant colonies, previously resigned to submission, found new strength in the Defiant's daring, but the victory came with a sobering realization. The Jarvak's high command would not sit idle. Admiral Vector's rage at the breach of their communications was palpable. He vowed to root out the traitor within his ranks and crush the rebellion with brutal efficiency. Back aboard the Defiant, the crew gathered in the aftermath, weary but triumphant. Elena addressed them with quiet pride. "We've won an important battle, but this war is far from over. Our actions have shaken the Empire. They will come for us harder than ever, Lieutenant." Harris added, "The traitor's identity remains unknown. The Empire's internal cracks might be their weakness, but also a danger. Trust will be tested." Elena nodded. "We must remain vigilant both against our enemies and within. Our unity is our strength." As the Defiant charted a course back toward Allied space, the galaxy's balance shifted. The Empire's veneer of invincibility was cracked. The spark of rebellion had grown into a roaring flame. The fight for freedom had reached a turning point, and for the first time in a long time, the future seemed uncertain, filled with possibility. The galaxy was no longer the silent expanse it once was. The USS Defiant's stand against the Jarvak's empire had ignited a firestorm that spread across countless star systems, breaking centuries of fear and submission. The Empire's grip was loosening, and with every victory, hope bloomed. Brighter dot Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Defiant, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. The crew around her moved with practiced precision, their faces marked by fatigue, but alight with determination. The war was far from over, but today, they had taken a giant step forward. Reports from allied worlds filled the communications console. Resistance cells were growing in number and strength, supply lines were disrupted, and Imperial fleets were stretched thin. The Empire scrambled to respond, but its once fearsome dominance was faltering. Admiral Vector's once certain plans had been undone by the unexpected resilience and unity of those who refused to bow. His hunt for the traitor within the Jarvak's ranks had turned up little but suspicion and paranoia. His forces were scattered, morale shaken. Yet, the Defiant's victory was not just military. It was symbolic of proof that the galaxy's fate could be rewritten. In a secret conference room aboard the Defiant, leaders from several allied species gathered. The air was tense but hopeful as they planned the next phase of their campaign. "We must build on this momentum," Elena urged. "The Empire is vulnerable, but still dangerous. Unity and coordination are our greatest weapons." Lyra, the young engineer from the mining colony who had once whispered of rebellion in secret, now stood alongside seasoned commanders. "We're ready to fight," she said, "for our homes, our freedom, and a future where no one lives in fear." The Alliance formed a coalition pooling resources, intelligence, and fleets. Training programs expanded, and previously isolated worlds opened their doors to the cause. The spark that had been the Defiant was now a blazing beacon for many, but even as hope surged, Captain Voss knew the road ahead would be treacherous. The Jarvaks would strike back with all their might, and sacrifices would be inevitable. One evening, as the Defiant sailed through the quiet expanse, Elena stood alone on the observation deck, watching the stars glitter like distant promises. "Lieutenant." Harris joined her silently. "You think this will end soon?" Elena smiled faintly. "Wars never really end, Harris, but what we've started, it's the beginning of something greater. Freedom." Their moment was interrupted by an urgent message from the Coalition Command. Intelligence reported a major Jarvak's fleet gathering near a critical star system, a last attempt to reclaim lost ground. Elena's eyes hardened with resolve. "Then that's where we'll meet them. We fight not just for ourselves, but for every world that's dared to dream of liberty." The Coalition fleets prepared for a battle that would define the future of the galaxy. The Defiant led the charge, a symbol of defiance and hope. When the battle came, it was fierce and unrelenting. Explosions lit the void as ships clashed in a deadly dance, but the Coalition's unity, strategy, and courage overwhelmed the Empire's forces. One by one, Jarvak's ships fell or fled. As the final enemy cruiser surrendered, a wave of relief and triumph swept through the fleet. The Empire's reign of terror was broken. Back on the Defiant, Captain Voss addressed her crew. "We've done the impossible. The galaxy is waking up, and we've given it a future worth fighting for." The stars outside seemed to shine brighter as if the universe itself celebrated this new dawn. In the years to come, The coalition would rebuild shattered worlds, establish lasting peace, and honor those who sacrificed everything for freedom. And through it all, humanity's courage and resilience would be remembered as the spark that changed the course of history. The USS Defiant's journey was a testament to the power of hope, unity, and the unyielding spirit of those who choose to stand against tyranny. The dawn of freedom had come.